Good morning, everyone. Tyler Averitt here, Oakland Goodsell, Dawson Scott. New face is taking over the podcast today. We're excited to get rolling.
So we thought we'd just started out by kind of going over Dawson here, his credentials. We kind of begged him to be able to do this one. Everybody wanted to hear from him. So started out like 18, right? Just freshly out of high school, just a wee lad, and went and sold 200 accounts first summer. Went on a mission
First summer.
Went on a mission to Honduras. What was the actual mission called?
Honduras, Tegucigalpa.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. Anyways, comes back, first summer managing, sells 450 accounts, then 600 in the following summer, sells a modest 808 accounts in his final summer knocking for Omni Pest Control, and went on to start his own company that's right around 10,000 accounts now and $7 million in annual recurring revenue. Good to have you, Dawson.
Dude, thanks for having me on. And shout out to all my Romney pest controllers out there. It was a beautiful place.
Beautiful time.
And my Uncle Mitt, I hope he's doing well.
Anyways, Doss, the first thing we wanted to ask you, what would you say, we wanted to start kind of lighthearted. What would you say is your best memory in the pest control space, whether it's been knocking or since you've owned your own company? Memory or story?
I think the biggest thing is just the growth. I think a lot of times people get really focused on the cultural things that surround pest control, but I think the thing that's been most impactful is at every stage I've been able to grow personally. When I was a sales rep, to then when I was a manager, to then when I was a regional or a team lead, a leader of everybody, and then when I was started my own company, I just feel like the growth that I got at each stage of the game was so fast and so much higher than what you see in a lot of other jobs. And I feel really, really lucky that I was kind of brought into it. I didn't ask to come in. I don't think a lot of people know this, but my mom was the person that recruited me, which I don't think that happens a lot of times.
She just forced you to go out there.
Yeah, dude. I remember we were heading to, just so everyone knows on the pod, me and Oakland were cousins. I was actually heading to Sunday with Grandma.
Yeah.
And we're heading over, and my mom's like, "So how are you paying for your mission?" And I was like, "Well, I thought you guys were paying for it." And my mom was like, "Oh no, you got to find a way to figure that out." And when you're in high school, you're like, I have no idea.
You just have no money, nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just kind of felt like, Mom, I don't think I can muscle up. It was $10,000 at the time. I don't know what it is now. Is it?
I think it's similar.
Yeah.
It's right around there. That's good. Inflation hasn't affected that. That's nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and then my mom was like, "You go sell for your Uncle Greg." And Greg Romney, if he ever listens to this, shout out to him. He was a huge mentor to me. And we'll have to have him on the pod sometime.
Of course.
He'd be a great listen. Yeah, but he just took me under his wing, showed me a lot of different sales tactics and tips and tricks. And then my first manager, John Harrell, I probably should shout him out too.
Yeah.
He's my Mace Windu. I'll be Obi-Wan. I'll take that character.
Yeah. No, 100%. What's best what's your favorite story, funniest story that's happened, whether while you were knocking or while you were running your company?
Oh, dude, there's a lot of good stories, and if I had to pick just one though, so probably my first week knocking, this is 2014, this is back when they were discovering some fossils and some other stuff like that, but I was knocking just in the middle of Plano, and I was going through, and I was just getting absolutely hammered. And there was a rep that decided to knock with me.
Is Plano in Dallas or?
Plano's in Dallas. Yeah. So I was up in Dallas, Texas, knocking in the summer heat. I was pretty early. It was probably week 1 or 2. I hadn't knocked much, and I was struggling. I don't think I picked it up crazy quick in the first 2 weeks. But there was a rep there. His name's Dill Gallen, and I have no idea where he's at now. But if he ever comes out of the woodworks, I'd love to.
He just listens to this and reaches out, dude. Somebody send this to Dill Gallus.
Hey,
Gallen.
Yeah, Dill Gallen, dude.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Pay some respects to the man.
Yeah. No, Dill was a good dude. One thing that's funny is he hopped onto my laptop when we were out there, and his Google password still populates on my email every time I log in.
Wow.
I don't know if like Google Chain keeps that, but I have access to his email, but I never go in. So Dylan, if you're out there, is definitely some cyber breaching that could be going on. Sorry, we're getting super off topic, but basically I go in with him to an area, and he tells me, because he saw I was struggling, he's like, you knock down one side of the street, I'll knock down the other. And we start going, and I was pissed because he had 2 sales, and I was a rookie and I had none. And so it's about lunchtime, and he's like, we're going to go another hour, and then at the end of the hour, we'll...
How long had you been doing it for?
He was a rookie too, but I came out midsummer.
Yeah.
And so he'd been going out 2 months. And I feel like a lot of times rookies get really excited once they've kind of figured out oh, I can pull in a couple deals a day.
And he probably was acting like he was like a third year.
Yeah, he's like, oh, back when I started. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But we were selling down the street. I knocked into a home, and a kid answered the door. And he was probably, I want to say 6'3", 6'4". And he was just no
some
clothes,
disabilities,
not dressed at all. He was disabled, and he actually ran me over. And I remember just feeling really, really low at that point, just being like, why am I out here in Texas? The guy next to me is succeeding at like such a high level, I felt like at the time.
And you're just laying on the ground.
And I'm just laying on the ground. I just got mauled by this
Wait, when you
dude.
say he ran you over, like he tackled you onto his lawn?
This big naked handicapped dude just like plowed Dawson.
Mauled me.
And you're just laying on the grass.
The concrete. Have you not heard this story?
No, and I've heard most of the stories.
It's crazy.
No,
It's
dude.
a crazy story.
He just ran me over. And I just remember at that point being like, I don't think I can do this. But what was cool is in the weeks that followed, I had my uncle would take me in and kind of talk to me. And I don't think he said anything magical, but he would always just instill like encouragement. And I don't think with most things there's like a magic bullet or like a silver lining or something crazy that you can do to like change someone's like what they're doing in the job or stuff like that. I just think that if you use your positive influence to pick somebody up and help them keep going, they're going to be super, super successful. And I think that's the one thing that I really am grateful that I could work under Greg, because he was so good at that. When I needed someone to give me an attaboy, when I needed someone to smile and crack a joke with me, remind me that I could do things, he always met me when I needed that. And so I was really grateful that I got to work with him and learn in that way. But after that moment, I definitely, when you get ran over by, I think the agent, the guy that ran over me, he had like Down syndrome, and he was huge. But I think I was really embarrassed too, because his mom came out and started yelling at me. He's like, "Why'd you let him out of the house?" I'm assuming that's what she said.
like it was your job.
Yeah, I felt horrible, but I just thought it was really cool that even though I had some really low moments in the beginning, I had a lot of really cool people to pick me up. And I think anyone that's in this space, if you have someone like that, that's something that goes beyond percentages, where you're knocking, what you're getting paid. If you have someone that's actually willing to come with you and be like, "Hey man, I love you and I'm going to take care of you," you're going to be successful.
And like obviously you had like a lot of really good leaders like around you, and I think that anyone that's came through the organization since has kind of like felt that way about you. Do you think that that's something that's kind of like learned, or do you think that's like a natural ability? Like, do you think it's something that you kind of had to practice and like intentionally like get better at, of like, hey bud, like let's get going, like picking people up and kind of like pushing sales reps to do a lot more than what they would do, and making sure they're in a comfortable place and taken care of?
1,000%. I think it's both, to be honest. Like, I think some of it is like a little bit within you, but I think it's definitely a growth mindset thing. You can definitely grow into that role and that ability. And I think you need to be taught that too. Like, I don't think you can necessarily learn everything like on your own or just reading it. You have to kind of be around great leaders to kind of instill that in others. And so I think you can do both. You can read a book, you can watch videos, and that can coach you up a lot. I mean, I'm always looking into that. But I also, going through some type of camp where there's someone that loves you, is going to take care of you and working hard next to you, that's some of the best training I think you can be offered in life. So,
That's cool.
Yeah.
Dawson, I'm curious, as someone that sold with you once at the time of your career where I felt like you had already kind of eclipsed to that point where you were a leader, like when do you feel like you made that switch from being the rookie that was getting trampled by people out in Dallas to being, the Greg Romney for someone like me or for someone like Oakland? When did that happen? And how'd you get there?
If you were selling with me and Ty out in 2018, 2019, those were some stellar teams. That was a good brotherhood, small teams, but they were fun to be around. And I felt like, I even got to be
Not
out
the
there
best
with you.
ones, but
No, really good teams. Great.
they were
Great teams.
It's just like,
It just depends on how you measure
I heard
best,
there's been better since then.
Yeah, it just depends how you measure it,
Yeah, have you ever heard of like the 96 Bulls? It was kind of like comparable.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Very similar. Yeah.
But the 2017 Warriors would wipe those guys.
No, I don't know. Yeah, we had Jordan on him.
Yeah, no, I'm teasing. Well, no, but to kind of go back to your question, I think at every stage of when you're growing, it feels like you're drinking from a hose. Just a big, I don't think you ever feel ready for it. There's a Harry Potter quote. I just watched a lot of those that I really, really like. And he says, "What's life without a little risk?" And in every step in your business career, I think you always need to have that mentality that I need to have some level of risk here in order to grow. Now, I don't think you should be hitting the casino with like your money, your time, or your energy. But I also think you need to put yourself in a situation where, hey, the future's not guaranteed. I don't know if this is all going to work out. But if I take one step, make an educated decision, and just move forward, I think it's incredible what you can do. And I think anyone out there listening, if you have that mentality, whether you're a sales rep trying to become a manager, or you're a manager trying to become a regional, or a regional trying to step into ownership or step into a new career or anything like that, just know it's going to feel super uncomfortable kind of getting into that next step, but I think it's worth it. At least that's what they keep telling me. I don't feel like I've made it yet. A lot of people tell me that that's what you keep doing. And thus far, it's worked.
The fake it till you make it
Yeah,
mentality. Okay. Is Harry Potter your go-to source for, insight and...
Lord of the Rings, Star
Okay.
Wars.
The Saints books.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude, I love this.
Good to know.
The Saints books are actually probably some of the best business books I've ever read.
Really?
And I mean that. I think what they did in those books in like the early church history, they built up a huge structure that blesses so many lives now, and they do it at a high scale. Did you guys see David A. Bednar came up to like the Silicon Slopes and kind of talked about what it is to like lead a global organization? It was really cool hearing him talk about that. But I think the Saints do a really good job of showing you when it was like 6 people in a small little house, and when they all got together and they started a church and how it grew and I just think it's really cool because you get to see kind of more of a firsthand all the opposition they went through and all that stuff. And I think it's similar in a business that you're going to go through a lot of like really ugly stuff. And if you can kind of like figure out how to organize people, treat them right, things are going to work out.
100%. Yeah, for those of you that don't live with Dawson, he's been hooked on these things, on the Saints books for a while now.
Yeah, dude.
And like every day it's a new there's this story and this is like how I feel like this like relates to like what I'm doing. But going off of like what we talked about like a second ago, I think that one of my favorite things about this job in the space is how it's all just about growth. And that's kind of what we talked about, like growth as a leader or going from like being a rookie to being a great leader. One of the things I wanted to ask though, and I wasn't there, but it seems like to me at least from the time that you were at like Romney, even from like 18, 19 to now like 22, 23, going into 2024, it seems like you've taken a massive leap from being like a good like recruiter to having like a massive downline with like nearly 100 reps. And just like, what do you think that was the biggest thing that like took you from like having like 10, 15, 20 guys being like a solid recruiter to building like a big organization? Like what things did you learn that made that jump?
That was an amazing question. The long, hard, stupid way. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants a shortcut. Everyone wants to be pushed, elevated beyond where they probably should be or at. I think if you take the right, smart, really well-educated decision, and it may not be sexy, it's not going to feel, holy cow, this is like, I found the holy grail and this is going to help me surpass forever. If you get really good at just being, hey, I'm going to make the next best move for myself, it compounds on itself. Warren Buffett talks about a magic penny. And if you could take the magic penny that doubles in size every day for 30 days or $3 million, which one would you take? And if you look at the time, or I think it might be $1 million, but at the time you hear like, oh, I'd rather take the $1 million than a penny that doubles in size every day. But what the analogy shows you is by the end of it, the penny comes out being 3 million. And so I think what's really, really cool about that analogy is it shows you don't be looking around for like the smoke in the mirrors or, oh, my buddy told me X or Y, this is crazy, it's going to be insane. Just get really, really good at, I'm going to make a well-educated, really smart decision today, because I think it compounds in your finances, in your dealings with people. Just always have that, like, where is this going to lead 20 years from now? And how is this the best decision now for everybody involved?
Do you feel like more comfortable as a recruiter than you did early on? And talk about like what the difference is there.
I felt really uncomfortable at the beginning because the people that you know are people that you went to high school with. They're people that you went and were on sports teams or went on missions with, or just people you saw in your circle. And you want to make sure that those people have a great experience. And sometimes I think within myself, I felt like maybe I'm not enough, or maybe I don't know if I can provide this, or maybe I don't know if my company can. But when I realized that when I thought more like that is when it felt more like that. But when I thought more of like, how can I just make this the best opportunity possible for Timmy that's coming out this summer so that he can sell at a really high level, learn a lot of great skills, and come out come out just blessed. I feel like when I started thinking like that about recruiting, they had a better experience. I was way happier the whole time too, because a lot of people don't talk about this, but an experience as a recruiter, it can be rough. Mm-hmm. A lot of you have to go in with people that are unsure about the situation. It's their first time. They're just learning it. And so you really have to be a very stable person alongside them. And I think if you can stabilize your emotions in that thinking and constantly being like, hey, I'm out here to bless somebody. I'm out here to help somebody today, rather than focusing all the money you're going to make. The best recruiters were always people that had that kind of mentality. How can I bless you? How can I use this job as a vehicle to expand my influence and bless a lot of lives?
Yeah.
So I think when you turn on that, it becomes really powerful in recruiting.
And your approach to like in meetings, I find is like a lot different than how other people approach recruiting. Like most people, it's like, oh, like look at us, like we're so big, we're so great. You should come with us because of this and this and this, like whatever reasons it is. But what I found, like I've sat in a lot of recruiting meetings with Dawson, probably more than anyone else, and every single time it's like, what to the recruit or to the kid that's talking with us, it's always like, what are your goals? Like, what do you want to do? Like, and it's almost like finding like a connector there, like a bridge, like, oh, how can we help this kid like get where he wants to be? And it was the same thing, like even when we went and sat down at like Maria's, so when I got home from my mission, it was like, you were asking me, you're like, what do you want to do like career wise? Like, what do you want out of this? And then you built that connection and ended up being like something that blessed me a lot because I was able to see the vision for it. I felt like cared for, and I also like was able, like it really motivated me. I think that I had a way better first summer because of that. But speak to that, like where'd you get that approach, and like why do you think that it's the most effective way to do it?
Well, first off, that lunch at Maria's was nice, and that was one of the best lunch meetings.
It was lucrative.
It was lucrative for me. That blessed me in more than just, I think, finances, but in just becoming. I mean, we were close as cousins, but I've gained one of my best friends just from that link up and the connections we've had and the time we've spent. So I think that lunch ranks up very high on some of the best times I've ever broken bread. So that was a good time. We go to Maria's a lot. That's actually where me and Ty broke bread too, to make that happen.
That's your bread and butter.
Where did we go with Stockton last year? I saw a picture pop up on my Snapchat.
It was Medici's.
It was like a pizza place.
Yeah, Medici Pizza.
That was a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a classic.
That was a good one. Dude, I've had a couple different like restaurants like that. Mobetta's was That was when I was heavier, had a couple extra pounds. That when I fell in love with that place. I've had a lot of different restaurants over the years. I feel like they fade after.
Be aware, you get Dawson Scott inviting you over to Maria Benitez.
Yeah.
You know what's coming.
Yeah.
The molcajete, dude. Freaking that rock with all that meat. It's delicious.
All of a sudden you're on you're walking down a street, you're on the top of a leaderboard, and life's just good.
Life's just good.
And like both of the last 2 years, like you've had like rookies that are, like, it seemed like you've told me about it a lot. It seems like first couple of years, like as a recruiter, like top rookies were around like 150 to like 200 accounts, like good reps, but like nothing like spectacular. Then these last 2 years, like you had Stockton who just completely exploded, and like Carter who exploded as well. What do you think like makes a great like sales rep? Like what are the big things that you think it takes for anybody that's listening to this that wants to be that like rookie of the year next year, wants to be like that next top rep? What are the qualities that it takes in a rep to get there?
Yeah. I would say the first thing is you just truly have to be able to just show up every single day. And I don't think just show up physically. A lot of people get that confused because they're used to going into jobs where it's like, if I'm just here, I'm going to get paid. But if you can show up physically, if you can show up mentally, emotionally every day and be giving each person that you interact with your best, and I don't even think you can at the beginning. There's definitely been times where I've not given my best like smile or approach, but over time I've gotten better. And I think if you can just get really good at being like, today in my job, I'm going to show up and I'm going to be really good emotionally here. I'm going to be good here physically and mentally, and just kind of like learn what it is to give your full effort every day at your job or your position. One, people are naturally just going to want to like work with you, be with you, and also I think you're just going to make more money. But I think it speaks a lot to those reps. Some of those guys that have come through, you mentioned Carter, Stockton. I think your name deserves to be up there too with that.
Of course, man.
With those guys. But what I've seen is if you're a person going into your job and you can say, hey, every day I show up physically, mentally, emotionally, you're just going to be really, really good. My grandpa would always tell me, you can do anything that anyone else can as long as you're willing to pay the price on those fronts. And so I just took that really seriously when he told me that. If I can just get really good at showing up in all three of those arenas every day when I go to work, I'll grow and the people around me will benefit.
Yeah, 100%. One of the biggest things that I think I learned too at the beginning that like really relates to this, like that you talked about that stuck with me, is everybody like focuses on like, oh, like what do I say? How do I say it? Like the sales psychology. But the first time like I really realized that that's only like a third of the whole game. There's like two other areas that are like just as important. Talk about those, like what are they, and like what should these reps like be focusing on outside of their sales psychology? Obviously you need to get the pitch down.
Yeah.
But outside of that, because for me, like at least that was probably like the part that came easiest. I just basically copied anything this guy would say, and like if he hadn't said it, if I hadn't heard him say it, I wouldn't, like especially at the beginning. But what are those other two areas? What all do people have to be focusing on as they get into their first summer?
The first thing, area management. You have to become a master at reading the landscape around you. Pest control is easy because bugs will pop up near fields by large bodies of water. Around different new construction, there's rodents that will pop up, or a number of different bugs. When foundation moves, ants come in. And so knowing those things beforehand when you're going into an area is really big. And then also strategizing yourself. Okay, if it's an older community, there's probably going to be, with a higher home value, there's probably going to be older people there home in the morning. So I'm going to position myself on that side of my area in the morning to get in front of more people. Because you don't really want to knock doors. You just want to be talking to a human being, because that's what's going to get you sales. So as you get really good at figuring out, how can I just maximize this area to get in front of the most people as possible, you're just naturally going to sell, not because you're a better salesman, but because you've better organized your life and how you go about selling.
And I felt like it wasn't even, like we had talked about this a lot, and this was one thing that Dawson really coached me on, but it wasn't until my second year where it got to the point where it was like, oh, I sold 8 here, like there's 8 more deals within like this neighborhood, like within all these like gray pins. Like I would always just be like, oh, I want to go like have some fresh stuff. So I think that's something that you taught me that was really big. as well.
Milk the hood.
Yeah. Well, it's funny.
You gotta milk it.
We've all been there. We've all been there when you call your recruiter and you're like, hey, man,
I'm out, dude. I'm out. There's nothing here.
Yeah.
And then we've all gotten that call too and been like, dude, like if I'm moving you, I'm going back there. I would just say that to them this last year.
It's always funny when the manager goes back and just milks it. Just like, yeah, but I got like 8 in your hood.
Just rips.
Nothing worse than Dawson Scott knocking behind you,
No.
cleaning up all your mess.
You
know?
just feel bad.
I love the chatter in the office though when someone goes into someone else's hood and they love to just tell everybody. They're like they walk in with their chest a little higher. They're like, oh guys, I was in so and so's hood yesterday and pulled out 4.
They missed quite a few. You know?
Everyone's like, oh shoot. It's kind of like when you used to go to the principal's office.
Especially when like you sell one of their red pins. I remember Garrett called me in August on like an area that I knocked like on my first or second day, like in May. He's like, "Bud, I sold one of your red pins," and he would not live it down.
No, and one of the cool things about that that you see too is even if you're a really good rep. I mean, you were a number 1 rep last year, and and you've been year over year like one of our best reps. Even the greatest like sales reps miss sometimes.
Yep.
And I think a lot of reps get the misconception that when they miss, it's, oh, I'm not good, I can't do this, and it's not true. The best people just get really good at making a lot of mistakes, forgiving themselves and moving on. And I think if anyone's listening to this going into the beginning part of the summer, just realize that we've all been out there. Like my first day, I went and cried behind a green box for like 2 hours before I went up and started knocking again. And by the grace of heaven above, like I somehow got 2 deals that first day.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we go into this being like, if I'm not perfect at the beginning, I'm not going to be able to do this. But I've seen so many different shapes, sizes come into this job, and as long as they stay consistent, they figure it out. So I think that's big.
It's awesome.
Same.
That's one thing I've been kind of curious about. Beyond like sales rep DOS is business owner DOS. And so I kind of wanted to dive into just, when you made that mental decision to go from, hey, I'm a killer sales rep and I'm building all this capital, to when you decided to say, hey, I want to start my own thing. I want to put that towards something. Like what went into that process, and what advice would you give to other young superstar sales reps like this guy as they kind of transition from just a sales rep to their next chapter?
That's a great question. For me, it wasn't, I would love to say it was something like super deep or like, oh, I had this like awe-inspiring moment. I always hear those on podcasts or kind of people passing the street. The truth of the matter is most of my friends that I had recruited previously were moving on to new chapters in their lives. And it made the most sense for me to stay in Utah. And I either had the option of going and finding a different sales job in a different industry, or buying a truck and seeing if I could make it make sense. And I wasn't planning on recruiting anybody that year or kind of growing my company that big. But a couple of people would just approach me and they're like, hey, I heard you're starting a company here and I'd like to sell. And to those 8 people that came out that first summer and sold with me, I'm so grateful that they did believe or felt like it was a smart option for them. But at the time, I was like, hey, I just want to stay home and try to get married. And
how's that going?
Didn't work out. Yeah. So if anyone's got someone for me out there, my number is, no, I'm teasing. But I just wanted, it was more of like, it just felt like the right decision at the time for my life to transition to something that was what I thought was going to be slower pace and ended up not being. But I think if we are going to get a little bit deeper though on like when I decided to transition over, managing a book of finance or getting really, really good at understanding like what a black line is, what the black line is, and how to keep yourself above it and make sure that you're making money. I got really, really good first at, I was purchasing homes while I was a sales rep and figuring out how to make those make money. And then also too, I was doing like a lot of private business funding where I was pushing out money to companies and seeing how to make that money kind of make an ROI. And once I got into a stage where both the homes and the capital that I had invested were making me enough money that I could live, I was like, it makes sense to start a business because I don't need to be paid from this. Like I can work for a couple years, and even if it doesn't end up being okay, I'm all right because these other investments that I have are still gonna be able to pay for my lifestyle. So I think everyone wants to go from like sales rep straight to like owning something, but I think there is this middle process of figuring out how can I make my own personal book of business grow. And if you get really good at that, I think just in turn starting a business is the next thing that happens.
And I was gonna ask too. You kind of answered this here, but go into a little bit more like depth. Like, it seems like every kid like wants to like start a business. Like I know so many kids just like have like nothing in the bank, and they're like, oh well, I'm gonna go like be an entrepreneur. Why did you go like when you did? Like why didn't you go earlier? Why didn't you?
Truthfully, I wouldn't have left. So I was working at Romney,
Yeah.
and I had a number of guys working with me. I was selling crazy. I was making great money. But I mean, I think I made close to $500,000 that year.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it was a great pay. And the next year to go into not making that, it was like a really weird adjustment for me. But I don't think I would have made that adjustment if everyone that I had, like most of the people that I recruited, not because they didn't want to come back or it wasn't a good situation or stuff like that. It was just, we'd sold multiple years together. And it was, everyone else was like, hey, I'm going to go jump into real estate and be an agent. I had a couple buddies that were going to go be institute teachers because that's like the life that they wanted to live. And that was one thing that I saw too. From the moment I got in, I was like, I'm not going to do this forever. And I think a lot of times we get like this fake idea of like, oh, one job is meant to fulfill my whole purpose in life. And I'm going to do this till the day I die. And I view it more as like every job that I've ever gone into, I know that my life's bigger than that. And at one day, you're going to come into it and you're going to be like, hey, this just doesn't make sense anymore. And you're going to move on to a new thing. And it's fine because that's part of your growth as a person. And so I think, I hope that answers it, but that's kind of like my thought on that. So.
100%.
Can I ask you guys a question really quick?
Yeah.
Can I turn the tables?
Of course.
Yeah.
So if we what should we name this podcast? We put out 5 episodes now. We haven't named it at all.
5 episodes deep with no. Well, how have you been? How have you been introducing it?
That's like going to kindergarten and just still not having your name yet.
Yeah. We should have something.
BRD Nation.
If you were going to kindergarten, that's crazy.
I liked the nest. The bird's nest, the flock, the
nest,
the fleet.
Basic.
Yeah, let's keep it the nest.
Too easy, too simple.
Too easy.
Yeah,
All right. Well, if you can comment below or give us some names, we greatly appreciate it.
Winning comment gets
a kiss
or a date from Dawson.
No,
assuming you're a female.
It was actually gonna be Rafa.
From Ross.
I love how we're talking about the comments right now. I feel like one of us needs to start like begging people to subscribe.
Oh, there's gonna be comments.
like every other YouTube channel.
Subscribe
hey, please
below.
hit the button down below.
Like and
subscribe to our channel. I think we're about at the 40 minutes mark, so we will wrap it up. But Doss, thanks so much for letting us kind of take over, get some wisdom out of you, and until next time.
See you guys. Love you, Ben.
Over and out.